Hello, everyone, and hello, Johnny. Welcome to the 1871 podcast. How are you, Johnny?
Good. Tired, but good.
Good. So this is our top five managers. It's part of our Reading FC Top 100 series, and we're choosing a countdown of our five top managers who we feel have made a really significant contribution to Reading in our lifetime. So going back 50 years or so in my case, less than that in Johnny's case.
Not much.
Going back 50 years in Reading's history. So just before we start on that, guests coming up for you next week and episodes coming up. So tomorrow at 6 p.m, these are all at 6 p.m. So tomorrow, Monday evening at 6 p.m, is former Reading Technical Director Brian Tevreden is our guest. He was at Reading at the same time as Ron Gourlay. So be very interesting to speak to Brian and also find out what he thinks about the current situation at Reading. So that's tomorrow. Brian Tevreden is our guest. And then on Tuesday, again at 6 o'clock, we're concluding our Reading FC Top 100 series by looking at who we think are the top five influential people in Reading's history. So that's Tuesday evening. And then Wednesday evening, again at 6 o'clock, former Reading defender Andy Bernal, who was also David Beckham's minder. So that's on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Reading women's defender Lily Woodham is our guest. And then our guest on Friday is Linvoy Primus. So again, all of those episodes are available from 6 p.m. onwards. So Johnny, top five managers. Compared to some of the lists that we've done recently, I found this one easy by comparison. It was just some thought about the order, I think. What about you?
Yeah, and I think kind of looking, it's the most successful kind of says it, or it narrows it down. I think there's been influential managers, and there's been for lots of different things, and going back over a long time, have had a big impact at the club, haven't they? For different reasons.
Yeah, we're talking sort of roughly last kind of 40, 50 years, because we can't really pass judgment on any managers before then. I don't think you can judge people from before you were born. So we're not that old. Well, feels like it sometimes, but anyway, top five managers. So this was actually a lot easier than choosing things like our top 10 games. For me, certainly. Couple of managers that just missed out for me, and then I'll ask you the same, Johnny. So I've got my countdown of top five managers, but I've got two that kind of just missed out for different reasons. So the first is Jaap Stam. Obviously, the season that he came in third in the Championship, lost in the playoff final to Huddersfield in 2017. So he's just missed out. The other one who just missed out on my top five is Maurice Evans. Won the Division 4 title in 1979. Reading had the record for the longest time without conceding a goal, more than 1,000 minutes. And I think also he was instrumental in putting good foundations in place before Ian Brownfoot came in. So those two missed out for me on my list. What about you, Johnny?
Well, I was going to say that actually the same one was Maurice Evans. For that reason, like you said, it was what he did for the club and setting up the club, and then his role was huge for a long time. And the other one for me was going back to my dad's years, Charlie Early.
Yeah,
got them promoted, I think, back in 77 around that time, wasn't it? And again, just that era of Reading was a unique era, wasn't it? With the team that we had, the characters that we had, the manager that we had. I was only little, but he was a good manager. There's a few others, but not in recent times.
No, and again, these are our own personal choices. I suspect we don't know each other's list. We always do it like this. I suspect we might have the same top two in the same order, but we'll see. My I think you went first last time, Johnny, didn't you? So I'll go first this time. My 5, 4, and 3. I found it quite difficult to pick the order, and you might have the same 3 names in a different order, Johnny. I think that's highly possible. So I kind of gave this some thought, and I thought, who made the biggest sort of significant contribution, achievements, and so on. And this person, my number 5, could have very easily been 4 or 3 on my list. And I was very tempted to put him higher, but I've got number 5, Ian Branfoot. Reading won promotion to Division 3 in 1984. He took over in the January, midway through that season, I think. Won promotion to Division 3, 1984, and then Division 3 champions in the 85-86 season, the record-breaking Royal season, and then 13th in Division 2 in 86-87, which would have been the equivalent of the championship, I think, back then. And then, of course, the Simol Cup, Reading winning a trophy at Wembley in 1988. And I think what I really liked about Ian Branfoot, and one of the reasons he could have been higher on this list for me, is actually he found a really effective way for success. So it was quite direct. So you had Michael Gilks on the wing, for example. It was kind of 4-4-2. So you had Trevor Senior, Kevin Bremner, Dean Horrocks. You have people like Stuart Bevan in midfield. And I think it was a really good kind of balance, really good mix. The players knew what the plan was, and they executed it well. So Ian Branfoot's my number 5. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I think the same conversation that you just had there about ones that can move up and down. And I went, in my head, how successful they were is in trophies and whatever, but it may not make any sense on here. But here we go. Mark McGee was my number 5, but we're talking points between him and others. I think because of, that to get us promoted, to then go on and do what he did. Yes, he left in not great circumstances, but what he put in place with that team got us to the playoff final. And I think, the way that team played, again, they had the spirit and the character and the kind of same kind of traditional kind of football, wasn't it? It was 2 wingers, big centre forward, a smaller centre forward alongside, and a workhorse in midfield and some quality alongside, and then a very solid back four, and obviously Super Shaka in goal, which was, he came out of the blue really to, in that team. And I think, he got Reading fans believing that we could achieve, and that was what McGee did with Colin Lee, who we've had on here. It would like, the what if he'd have stayed and that season and what he could have built. But I think for him, I don't think his career really kind of peaked after Reading that great. He went around a lot of teams and didn't really achieve huge amounts. So maybe there's some regret there. Maybe he wants to come and have a chat. We could have all the top 5 best Reading managers on the podcast. That'd be great. So that was number 5.
Good. That'd be good. And I think part of a successful manager, what makes them successful, is to do with the recruitment. And if you look at some of the players that came in, you mentioned Shaka Hislop, Simon Osborne. We had some great players at that time, Darius Dovcek as well. So you come up with a plan of how you want to play, and you find players to fit within that plan as part of that jigsaw. So so that's your number 5. Moving on to my number 4 now, Alan Pardew. So Division 2 playoff final in 2001, promotion to Division 1 in 2002, 4th the following season, and lost to Wolves in the playoffs. And really importantly, laid some really strong foundations for what was to come next. And we know all about what was to come next. And I think the fact that he had Martin Allen there as well helped, because that was a good team. But I think Alan Pardew really intelligent football man, knew how to get success. And I think part of the reason why I've got him, in at number 4 is because of the significant contribution he made to the development of that team as well. So Alan Pardew is my number 4. I suspect all of these 5 might be the same, Johnny, in a different order. So who's your number 4?
You just mentioned him, Alan Pardew. Yes, the same reason, mate. It's just, that he changed a bit of a culture at that club that we were, back in the early 2000s, where we were drifting out of League One as it was then, and really installed alongside Martin Allen a real change of culture, mindset, belief, the way we played. He was, he was kind of a bit of a feisty kind of character as a manager as well. I think he had a few, he rubbed up a few players the wrong way. I think, him, Curo didn't always see eye to eye, but he was very, very focused on his job. And again, he left in on gardening leave for a while, didn't he? And yeah, he had a good career afterwards. And I think somebody has a chance to, like Mark McGee, to get promoted themselves, to get another job. You either take it or you don't. The opportunity might not come again. It's one of those things in football, isn't it? But yeah, he was certainly somebody I think that was really, like you say, set the foundations in place for us.
Yeah, he's available at the moment. By the way, that's interesting. I can't see him coming back to Reading. His last 2 jobs were in Bulgaria and Cyprus, and he actually left the job in Bulgaria, CSKA Sofia, I think, because of racism from the fans towards. His assistant manager there was black, and the home fans were racially abusing him, so he didn't want to carry on putting up with that. So he left, then went out to Cyprus. Can't see him coming back to Reading, but certainly in terms of making a great and significant contribution, certainly deserves to be on that list. So top 3 now. I've actually, for number 3, I've gone for Mark McGee and Colin Lee. And the reason I've done that is I think that's a great example of a good team. Yeah. So I don't think Mark McGee would have done as well as he did without Colin Lee. And Mark McGee actually came in as player manager. And he won Division 2 with Reading in 93, 94. And then the momentum carried on, put Reading in a really strong position to challenge for promotion to the Premier League. Obviously, finished second that season, and as you say, we don't know. I mean, we were only 3 points behind Middlesbrough in the end, weren't we? We beat them 1-0 at their place. And again, I go back to what I said earlier about recruitment. Players like Simon Osborne, Andy Banal, Darius Dovcek, Shaka Hislop. The list goes on, really. Some really, really good recruitment. So I've gone for my number 3, Mark McGee and Colin Lee as a pair. How about you, Johnny?
Well, you mentioned him as your number 5. I had him as number 3, Ian Bramford. Again, we're talking, just for, in my head, it was because he won the Synod Cup, got 2 promotions. Does it outweigh the others? No, because they're all successful. But maybe sometimes I think his contribution gets a bit undervalued or underrated to the Reading history. And I know, people give out about playing styles and stuff, but that bit, if you're winning and you're successful, fans, that was back in the 80s. Pitches weren't like the snooker table now that they are. So, he like you said, he did success. He built a team and a jigsaw that worked and was very successful. When you got Trevor Senior up front, all you got to do is give him the service and he'll score your goals, and that's what he did. An understated legend, I think, at Reading, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's a lot of the younger fans won't kind of appreciate what he actually did. I think one of his reasons he was really successful for Reading was because he found an effective way to win games. And actually, yes, it was quite direct, but it was exciting to watch as a fan.
Yeah.
You got some exercise with your neck muscles sometimes, but you know, Trevor Senior up front, winning the ball, scoring loads of goals. Kevin Bremner, Dean Horrocks. You know, we had Paul Canaville back then, didn't we? Yeah, so he could have very easily been higher up on my list as well. In fact, I did the same. I did have him at number 3 at one point, and then I just felt that Mark McGee and Colin Lee and Alan Pardew, you know, the significance of the contributions that they made and the success that they had.
Small margins, isn't it?
Yeah, I think kind of those 3 choices, you know, it's put them in any of those 3 positions. Really, I think they're all. I would go as far to say as those 3 are kind of joint third. Look, number 2 and number 1, we're rattling through this, and I'm going to make a prediction here. I think it's going to be the same 2 people and in the same order.
I think so.
Let's do it anyway. I mean, number 2, because of who number 1 is, I think probably had to be Brian McDermott. For me, might be different for you, Johnny. I don't think, but you know, won the title, secured promotion to the Premier League in 2012. But I think what we should really appreciate about Brian McDermott is the huge contribution he made, actually, to Steve Coppell's.
Yeah.
You know, the recruitment. If you look at the likes of Kevin Doyle, and I think he made a huge contribution actually to helping Reading win promotion to the Premier League the first time around. So that's number 2 for me. I'm guessing it might be the same for you, Johnny, but go on.
Yes, it's we've never been as right as this before, have we? But it is a lot easier with the manager. But yeah, no, Brian, I think, you know, and as we both know, he's an absolutely lovely guy who, you know, even you know, with his battles that he's had, that he's come out with his story and is helping others, as Brian always does. You know, he's a unique guy who, I think, you know, he's so understated in himself. He doesn't bang the drum about how good he is, but he was, and you know, underestimated as a manager to get that team into the Premier League. The Premier League season wasn't great, but that's down to funding and lots of different things. But to get up there was an achievement. But like I say, that all the other stuff that he's done for Reading is huge, and again, you know, goes under the radar a bit because, like, without him, we wouldn't have the 106 team. Without his scouting and without his behind the scenes work and his knowledge of football is so good. And you know, now he's got I think, a director of football at Hibernian. It'd be interesting to see how well he does up there, and I'm sure it'd be a success because he's that guy, you know. And it's
yeah, and he sort of said that he was a bit of a reluctant manager, and actually what he really enjoys is the coaching and the scouting. So probably the role at Hibernian, I think he's director of football or sporting director. I'm not sure the exact job title, but something like that. So he's kind of gone back to what he really enjoys, and I think that's development of players and teams. I think he enjoys that, and that suits him more than being a manager, because I'm not sure he was that comfortable being in the limelight. Obviously with his issues that he's come out and talked about as well, but yeah, his contribution certainly to Reading. I'm just going to take a wild guess that number 1 is the same as well.
It could possibly be.
But you could sort of say, well, what's the point of doing this episode? Because it's like obvious who's going to win. But we wanted to talk about, you know, Alan Pardew, Ian Bramfoot, Mark McGee, etc. You mentioned Charlie Hurley, you know, Maurice Evans, Jaap Stam, even. You know, obviously we've had a few sort of good moments since the last time we were in the Premier League. Obviously, FA Cup semi-final, but you wouldn't put that down as you'd put that down as a sort of great FA Cup run rather than great Reading manager, wouldn't you? But I think Jaap Stam, when he came in, actually, after about 7 games of Veljko Paunovic's season, we thought he could be good.
Yeah.
It all went wrong after that.
Typical, wasn't it?
Look, no surprise here, and like I say, I'm gonna take a wild guess that Johnny's going to say the same. It has to be Steve Coppell. I would say without doubt the 2 greatest seasons in Reading's history.
Yeah.
The 106 season, amazing, and then in a lot of ways, even better the following season, 8th in the Premier League, within 1 point of getting into Europe. That was a fantastic season. I think it's both of those seasons put together, and that was Steve Coppell, but also with Brian McDermott in the background as well. So,
and he built that team, didn't he, over a few years? When he came in when Pards left, that team took 2 or 3 years of tinkering, wasn't it? He building. We were around the playoffs, I think, a couple of times, not far off, and then he just changed, and then momentum.
Yeah, Johnny, go on in. Who's your number 1?
I'd have to go for Steve Coppell.
Steve Clarke.
Steve Clarke. No. Steve Coppell. I mean, what can you say? I mean, we've spoken to Brian. They're both such lovely guys. I mean, you can sit and listen to them talk football all day because of their knowledge of the game is just unbelievable, and just the way that they come across as human beings as well is special. They're not. It's kind of throw the Fergie style management. Maybe they do behind closed doors. You just get that impression that Coppell was so calm, didn't get phased by.
He got one chance to do that stuff, though.
Yeah. Again, like you're saying about Colin Lee, wasn't we? Said this about before. Combinations.
Martin Allen with Alan Pardew.
Yeah. Those combinations that really kind of, whether it's good cop, bad cop, isn't it? But they work off each other, and it works for the players because they clearly get the support they need. It's just that was just that. If anyone can ever, do better than Steve Coppell as a Reading manager, come on here and we'll have a chat for a long time. Yeah.
So we're gonna recap on our top 5 countdown. But I think for me, going back to when I started supporting Reading in the record-breaking Royal season in the 80s, Ian Branfoot was the manager. I mean, what he did with that team, he could have easily been higher up on my list. So my countdown, and again, it's about the significance of their contribution to Reading's success and also development of the club. So, Alan Pardew certainly fits into that category because I think he did help to take the club forward, and also lay some good foundations for what was to follow. So, yes, you have to give Steve Coppell all the credit for that, but also think about what Alan Pardew had done previously. So look, my 5-1 countdown, in joint 3rd place, Ian Branfoot, Alan Pardew, and Mark McGee and Colin Lee. So I had Ian Branfoot at number 5, Alan Pardew number 4, Mark McGee and Colin Lee at number 3, but it could have easily been the opposite way round. So that's my 5-3, and then my 2-1 is Brian McDermott at number 2, and Steve Coppell at number 1. We both think is the greatest Reading manager of all time. I think most Reading fans would agree with that. Be interesting to find someone who doesn't agree with that. But Johnny, remind us of your 5-1.
Yeah. So it's the same names, just a slightly different order. So Mark McGee was 5th, Alan Pardew 4, Ian Branfoot 3, Brian McDermott 2, and Steve Coppell 1. It would be interesting to see if there's any older fans that have got memories of the previous managers, to back in the 60s.
Yeah.
That, to talk about that, because that would be interesting. So there's some managers I went through. There's some managers that were in place for a long time, weren't they? Back in those days.
So you mentioned Charlie Hurley. I think Maurice Evans, he was really well respected.
Roy Bentley was there for a while, I think, wasn't it? Harry Johnston, I was looking.
Yeah, was Ted Drake manager?
I think
Reading.
I think back in the. I just have a look here now.
Then didn't he go on to manage Arsenal or something? Ted Drake.
Ted Drake was in just before our time, June 47 to June 52.
Okay. What are you saying?
Then,
before my time?
No, before our time. Our time.
Oh, right, okay. Quite a bit before our time.
Definitely. Yeah, Jack Mansell. Was there a couple of years. Jimmy Wallbanks, another name. Not there for that long. Now there's one there that slips the memory. John Hazelden.
Okay.
It's left from 30th of April 91 to 10th of May 91. That must be the shortest management. 10 days as the manager.
Ted Drake's an interesting one because he'd made as a player, he played for England.
Yeah.
And actually looking at the Ted Drake Wikipedia page, which may or may not be 100% accurate, but he made 5 appearances for England in the 30s, scored six goals in 5 appearances for England. He made he was at Arsenal for 11 seasons, 167 appearances, 124 goals. And then he managed Hendon non-league for 1 year, and he was manager of Reading for 5 years. And then he went to Chelsea. He was manager of Chelsea for 6 years, and he won the Division 1 title as a manager for Chelsea.
And played cricket as well. He's originally in both football and cricket.
again, our top 5 countdown was really kind of the last, the managers in our lifetime. We don't, it's not necessarily the greatest ever Reading managers. Probably, perhaps Ted Drake would be on that list. But no, I don't think there'll be too many arguments with our list, with our top 5. Maybe the order, actually, like I say, I was very tempted to put Ian Branfoot in at number 3 as an example. Could have been Alan Pardew at number 3. But no disagreements on the top 2 and the order of the top 2.
No, definitely.
All right. Well, that was compared to our top 5 seasons. That was a relatively short episode. So coming up, these are all at 6 o'clock. We've got 5 episodes this week coming up. So tomorrow, our special guest is former Reading Technical Director Brian Teverden. So looking forward to that. Tuesday, we're concluding our Reading FC Top 100 series by looking at our top 5 influential people in Reading's history. And Wednesday, our guest is Andy Bernal. Thursday, Reading women's defender Lily Woodham. And then on Friday, we've got former Reading defender Linvoy Primus, and they're all available from 6 o'clock onwards. And you can watch all of our episodes on YouTube. You can listen to all of our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast. So thanks very much, Johnny. Relatively short.
Nice.
But
that was the easiest one.
So I think it was the easiest one, and obviously we've talked a lot about the seasons that those managers were in charge for. But probably unanimous decision, not just with us, Johnny, but all round. Steve Coppell has to be Reading's greatest ever manager, I think.
Yeah. Our influential top 5 is going to be an interesting one. I don't know if we'll get to say. I think we might be slightly different on those ones, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, and there will be different reasons, and people have their own personal opinions. So it is 5 influential people. I'm sure that will include on Johnny's list. I'm guessing that will include at least 1 or 2 managers, but it's not necessarily going to be all managers. That's up to you, Johnny. But 5 influential people. So that could be managers, chairman, owners, whatever. The current owner, probably not getting on my list, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
I think Kingsley's got more chance probably of getting on the list than that.
I would agree with you. I think that's entirely accurate. Yeah. So next episode coming up, just as a reminder, is tomorrow, so Monday evening at 6 o'clock. Former Reading Technical Director Brian Teverden is our guest.